Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. And just to let you know that if you need a reading, just go to maryenglish.com. There is a little button on the first page there that will take you to my app where you can book, and you can also see my calendar where my appointments are available, because sometimes people email me and ask me, when you're available, Mary. You just need to click on that link. You don't have to necessarily book something, just choose something, and then you'll then see the calendar and you can see when I'm free. But anyway, that's if you need a reading. So this week we're going to be covering something which, again, I have never covered. Mary, I can't believe you've never covered this. No, I haven't covered it. And it's called the void of course moon. And I have to be honest, I have never used it. But just because I haven't used it doesn't mean to say that it isn't a valid piece of astrology. It's very big in the US, and I'm going to read you some quotes for some books and people talking about it. And we're going to do a couple of charts that demonstrate when the moon is void, of course, and how did it even get to be called the void of course moon. So it's pretty ancient how it originated, so I will put links. And it apparently in the 1st century AD, somebody called Dorotheus, I don't study ancient astrology, so you have to excuse me. And there's a quote here on the sky script by Deb. And if you find the moon void of all the planets, none of them aspects it, and none is in the ascendant or aspect in the ascendant, then this native is void of good in livelihood, possesses pain and hardship in the pursuit of what you need. So that's from a book called Carmen Astrologicum, and apparently that's the 1st century AD. So then in the 2nd century it's called void coursing. The 4th century it's now written in capital letters. Moon is void of course, and this is somebody called Matthias, or it's in his book called Matthias, don't quote me. And that's a 5, 6, 7, 8, chapter 8. Abu Mashar in the 9th century. It is void of course if a planet separates from application with a planet in conjunction, So let's say the expression, is that the right thing? The concept has been used for a long time. And as clearly noted on the AstroWiki website, let me go back to it, AstroWiki, void of course, I'll put for the link that as well. It says here, the moon is said to be void of course in the phase after it has made its last major aspect to a planet during its 2.5 day passage through one sign until its entry into the next sign, i.e. no conjunction, opposition, square, trine or sextile. It is as if it were, inverted commas, running idle. The void of course moon is considered to be significant in horary astrology. For example, if a question is put during the time that the moon is void of course, it is thought that the subject matter is unlikely to occur or will probably be delayed. A project started during this period may have a hard time getting off the ground or not run according to plan. This situation is considered to be particularly significant in the USA, most notably in event astrology and mundane astrology. The question of whether the moon is void of course can also play an important role in electional astrology, which attempts to ascertain the most favourable times for all kinds of action. The void of course moon is not thought to have any significance for birth chart interpretation. I'm glad they put that in there, because otherwise there's going to be loads of people that oh, you were born with a void of course moon, it's not going to happen for you. So let's translate that into English before I give you any more quotes. So when you're looking at, I think it's going to work best myself when you're looking at a date to have something happen, and the moon changes sign every 2.5 approximately days, and when it goes from one sign to the next, while it's doing that, so it's changing, if is the operative question here, if it forms no aspect at all to any other planet, then it's in this place that is called void of course. Now, I don't know how it got to course. I think, looking back at the old bits, of course, like it's not on its course, so it's out of the course, because words change over the years to what their use is. And I've titled this episode Avoid Avoid the Void, because you don't really want to be choosing something that's during those dates. So I will demonstrate with a chart in a minute, but we're going to quote a few more other people so that we've got different people's perspective of it. But it's basically when the moon is changing sign and it's in that bit going from one sign to the other, and it's not doing an aspect to anything. Now, my students, I always recommend that they get a copy of Astrology for Dummies. I think it's third edition now. And on page 389 in chapter 21, it says 10 plus 1 ways of using astrology in your life, the art of timing. And she says, if timing is everything, then astrology is the key to success. Not natal astrology, which has to do with your birth chart, but electional astrology, the intricate, high-pressure art of choosing a favourable date in advance. By applying its principles, you can pinpoint auspicious times, avoid problematic ones, align yourself with the cosmos, and magnify your chances of having a happy outcome. In this chapter, I show you how. To partake of the wonders of celestial timing, you must have an astrological calendar. I'm partial to the spiral-bound Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide or any of Jim Maynard's calendars, but any sufficiently detailed astrological calendar will do. At minimum, the one you choose should tell you when the sun, the moon, and each of the planets enter a new sign, when the moon is void of course, and when major aspects occur. Somewhere in the back of the calendar there should also be an ephemeris which allows you to look at the entire month in advance. Check out the Llewellyn offerings, and then she put, sigh, go to Amazon. More than any other event, a request to choose a wedding date can cause an astrologer to leaf frantically through the ephemeris in quest of the perfect day and then throw arms up in despair. And then she goes on and she talks about getting married, going on a first date, opening a business, scheduling a meeting, throwing a party. I'm not reading these, I have to buy the book. Purchasing technology, buying a house, having surgery, starting a diet or exercise program, writing a novel, memoir or screenplay, and then screenplay or laying low. So she considers the moon, and with it being void of course, as an important thing. However, on page 340, at the end of a chapter where she's talking about the moon itself, she says, avoiding the void, which is the title of today's podcast. Picture this: the moon spins into a new sign, let's say Taurus, which actually is where it is at the minute. It's going into Gemini in about 15 minutes time from when I'm recording this, and begins to connect with the planets. It conjuncts Jupiter in the evening, a splendid sight. Trines Venus a few minutes later, squares the Sun the next morning, opposes Mars at noon, conjuncts Saturn during All Things Considered, and then sextiles Mercury. After that, nothing. No more major aspects. A few hours later, it enters Gemini, which is exactly what it's doing while I'm doing this episode. And then the process begins anew. That span between the moon's last major aspect in one sign and its entrance into the next can last anywhere from a few seconds to a day or longer. During that time, the moon is said to be void of course. If the word void makes you nervous, you sense the problem. When the moon is void of course, things fall apart and judgment goes awry. Though ordinary activities are unaffected, business deals made during that time tend to crumble, and decisions, however carefully made, may turn out to be wrong-headed. The usual advice for a void of course moon is to avoid jumping into anything new or doing anything important like interviewing for a job or getting married. But let's get real. You'll have to be unnaturally vigilant to live that way. The moon goes void of course every couple of days, and to worry about it on a regular basis is insane. And this is the bit she says, I used to dismiss it entirely. That's me, okay? This is her, but I'm telling you, I'm doing that. And then one day a publisher called out of the blue and asked me to write a book on a subject I love and requested a meeting. I agreed to the suggested time, even though the moon was void of course. The meeting couldn't have been more exciting. We hit it off perfectly, saw eye to eye on everything, and enthusiastically agreed to terms. Yet the project died. Would it have made a difference if I'd scheduled the meeting for another time? Maybe not. Nevertheless, after that disappointment, I began to pay attention to the void of course moon. Still, the vast majority of the time I ignore it, and when I'm scheduling an important meeting, and she says, but when I'm scheduling an important meeting, starting a project I care about, or getting together for the first time with someone I hope will become a friend, I check my handy astrological calendar, and if at all possible, I avoid the void. Now, you don't have to do anything too complicated to find out where it is voiding at the moment, and I'm going to put a link to a website called Equinox Astrology, and that's run by the most fabulous astrologer, a guy called Robert Curry, and I'll put a direct link there. I was giggling when I looked at it this morning. So I've got for May 26. Obviously, you could be listening to this years into the future, but at the moment we're May 26, and the date today is the 17th. And it says that the moon is void. So where are we now? So 17th. Okay, so the moon is void at 2:01 a.m. to 3:24 and goes all the way. The moon is void all the way to 2:42 on the 19th, which is today's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I had to think they're Tuesday. But what made me laugh when I was looking at it, he's obviously using Google Calendars, and I don't know if this is his calendar or it's someone that writes the blurb on his website. But there's a funny bit here. It's Tony and Co Millers, and he's put up is cancelled out on his calendar from Monday the 10th of May all the way to the 15th. And then I saw another one. Oh yeah, so on Monday the 27th, we've got Dentist KC. Now, I've got a Google Calendar with a bit of software on there that, well, we've talked about that bit of software actually. It's called Transit Cal, and we've had the guest person that created it on the show, Natalie Lowe. Actually, it wasn't actually an interview. It was episode 391, her Transit Cal software. I'm going to actually have to get on the show. That's naughty of me thinking that I'd interviewed her. No, I haven't. But anyway, she uses Google Calendar. And obviously, Robert is using Google Calendar, and we've got, if you want to see when his dentist, I don't know who KC is, that's not him, because that's not his initials, but obviously somebody. Because when you set up Transit Cal, you need to, if you use your own calendar, then Transit Cal will add to that. I've got it separate on my Google Calendar, so I don't have, I'm going to the dentist, turning up on it when I'm checking things. But anyway, I will put a link to it, and we can see where it's going to be void of course at the moment, and you can look at that yourself. And it's a lovely bit of software that obviously somebody's created, but they've linked it to Google Calendar, and they're you're going to find out what other appointments I've got. I might have to email him and tell him. So don't start something. This is electional astrology now. Don't start a business, get married, on a void of course moon date. Now, as Ray says in Astrology for Dummies, she'd never used it and never paid any attention to it. I'm going to go back now to things that I might have started and then didn't continue. Was the moon void, of course, and then I can see if it does or doesn't work. And if you've used it, let me know. But let's do some chart examples, and I'm also going to quote from someone else's book. So the void of course moon that I'm going to demonstrate is what Robert Curry's got on his blog on this page here that I've given you the link to it. He said, in his first task as Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK Chief Finance Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng announced a mini-budget termed the Growth Plan to turn the UK economy around, and he announced it just after 9:30 a.m. on the 23rd of September 2022, when the moon was void in Virgo. The financial market's reaction to this tax and spend plans was severe. The GP pound crashed to an all-time low against the US dollar. £1 was $1.03. The Bank of England stepped in to buy government bonds, and the popularity of the Conservative Party plummeted in the polls. Within a month, Kwarteng was replaced. Most of his budget overturned, and the Prime Minister Liz Truss resigned. Faisal Islam of the BBC described it as the biggest U-turn in British economic history. So I've got this chart here. Well, it's not a grand idea to do things in a way. So we've got the sun is 0 degrees Libra, the moon is 0 degrees Virgo, and Mercury's 0 degrees Libra. And with the moon being 0 degrees Virgo, it doesn't aspect anything else, because the other planets are Venus in Virgo 22 degrees, Mars Gemini 17 degrees, Jupiter Aries 4 degrees, Saturn 19 degrees Aquarius, Uranus 18 Taurus, Neptune 23 Pisces, Pluto 26 Capricorn. And this particular chart's got a Libra ascendant, I say Mercury retrograding at 0 degrees Libra, exactly conjunct to the sun sign. But because the moon is at that point while it transits through the sign of Virgo, it won't start forming an aspect again until it gets to 17 degrees of Virgo. Then it will form a square. So if you look at this chart, you'll see then it will form a square to Mars, which is 17 degrees Gemini. It probably form a nice trine to Uranus when it gets to 18 degrees Virgo, because Uranus is 18 degrees Taurus. So it'll go through a square first, and then a trine, and then blah de blah. It'll do some other. I don't know if it can form an opposition to Neptune in Pisces when it gets to 23 degrees Virgo. So you've got to sort of have in your mind what aspects are, but easily you can, like I've created this chart here now, and it very clearly shows us that it's not forming any major aspects. Now, there was an argument on Deborah Holdings blog, an argument or discussion that if you're going to take the outer planets into account, you're probably never going to get to a place where the moon will be void. So I don't know, I haven't tried it out. I just tried experimenting, doing a few things at the minute, because over the next few days or whatever, but I couldn't find a point where it is, even though the website is telling me it's void. Of course, I just tried creating some charts and I couldn't do it. So I thought, well, I might as well demonstrate today with a chart that people are telling us is void, of course. But you are going to reach a point. So just, if you know that you're going to get married at 6 p.m, create a chart, and if the moon isn't aspecting anything, then move it forwards or backwards so that it will make an aspect to somebody somewhere. This is the theory behind it all, okay? Now, obviously, I have to quote from Oreo Astrology Plain and Simple by our lovely Anthony Louis. And on page 14, he tells us, a void of course moon. And he says, the modern definition is that the moon is void of course when it will not complete, brackets, perfect favourite word for Virgos, and he's Virgo, any major aspects before leaving its current sign. Lilly defined the moon as being void on its course when it travels without being in orb of applying to a major aspect with any other planet. Obviously, they didn't use outer planets. Nothing functions when the moon is void of course. Matters seldom go handsomely forward. Some astrologers believe that because nothing will come of the matter, there may be nothing to worry about, or little the querent can do to alter the situation. If void of course, is the moon in Cancer, Taurus, Sagittarius or Pisces. According to Lilly, the moon is able to perform when void in these signs. Okay, so this is a bit of advice from the ancients, that if your void of course moon is in Cancer, it's always happy in Cancer, I suppose, Taurus, Sagittarius or Pisces, then boomf. Lilly took this rule from a guy called, I didn't say guy, that's my quote, sorry. Lilly took this rule from Guido Bonatus's aphorism number 64, which relates to the moon occupying the signs of dignity of the benefic planets Venus and Jupiter. Okay, if the moon is void of course, do the significators apply to a major aspect before the moon leaves its sign? Is this aspect strong enough to overcome the void of course moon? So signifiers, so like Venus is the ruling planet to Taurus, that type of things, yeah. So that's your significator. He then goes on to like moon in late degrees, Saturn in the 7th. These are reasons. So this is when you're casting your chart, and they're called considerations before judgment. So your man, Lilly, and his mate, Guido Bonatus, they will say that if the moon is void, of course, in Cancer, Taurus, Sagittarius, Pisces, then it's all kushti. If it isn't in those signs, then it's not kushti. And according to this chart here that our lovely Robert has created on the 23rd of September 2022, it isn't in those cushy signs. It's in Virgo and it's 0 degrees and it ain't doing anything, and that wasn't an ideal time for him to do his announcement. Maybe he could have delayed it a bit until it was conjuncting to Venus. That would have been nice. I'm also wondering here that if all the planets are like they are at the moment, they're all pretty much one side of the circle, then through all of those signs of the zodiac, it's never going to do that void of course thing. It's mathematically impossible, I would have thought, since we've got planets in Aquarius, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Is it going to go voidy? Because if it goes into a Leo, then it's going to be in opposition to Aquarius. I don't know, maybe it has to be some sort of late degree. Anyway, so that's what the experts tell us. And I have got a chart here, so I'm feeling happier that I managed to find a date and whatever. I can't find one at the moment, even though I'm using Robert's calendar and I'm using the dates and times that he's saying on there. I don't seem to be able to create a moon that isn't void of course for those dates he's given us, but maybe I need to interview and get more information. So going back to what we've been told already, when it goes through those, and it's just when it's changing from one sign to the next. So as I'm speaking to you, it's going from the sign of Taurus into Gemini at some point. And it might be that when it's like a really early degree or a really late degree, then it isn't going to make an aspect to something else unless something else is in a really early degree and really late degree. So void of course moon, don't start your business, do your thing. It's not going to be the best thing to happen. So if you've got any questions on this, I'm sure I've got thousands. But anyway, do get in contact, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. We have got a guest coming up soon. So we've got Vanessa Montgomery, who's the website is All Stars. So she's in Australia. So I'm going to be interviewing her and she's going to be on in a couple of weeks. Time differences, calendars, etc. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you've got any questions about astrology or you want your chart to be featured, then do ping me an email, mary@maryenglish.co.uk, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye now.